Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good wherever you are. And welcome to another live stream from Captivate Summer Series on how to get the best and the most out of the Captivate dashboard. I'm your usual, what would you call me, raconteur maybe? I'm not sure. Head of podcaster support and experience here at Captivate. And we'll go through all these details, as we get people joining in on the live stream. As usual, we'll give everyone around about 4 or 5 minutes to join in. Say hi in the comments, where you're from, what your podcast's about, what you're doing today, what you're hoping to do at the weekend, anything like that. Let us get to know you and let us know where you're from and what you're doing this fine Wednesday, June the 11th. And I can see good old Dan, the delivery doctor, is already in the chat over in Coburg. Did you manage to get down? It was the Reader's Nook, by the way, Dan. When I came off the live stream last week, I thought I need to know the name of my friend's bookstore if I'm going to talk about it, because I actually mentioned it. I had a guest on, I think I mentioned to you on another podcast episode that I did, who's also in Coburg, and I said the same thing. I think it's called the Book Nook. He didn't correct me though. It's the Reader's Nook bookstore. Anywho, I'm not sure if you got down there or not, but hopefully, it's all nice and sunny. It's really nice here in Huntsville, or just below Huntsville in Ontario today. So nice 21, 22 degrees weather. So it's pretty pleasant here. Hopefully it's the same where you are. Justin, how you doing, mate? I think, where did I see you the other day? Was it on the Facebook group, or was it on, was it online? I know I saw you. We were chatting somewhere online the other day, and I apologize that I don't recall. My complete bad there. But hi, hope you're doing well, Justin. Hope you're doing all good. And remember, like I say, just let us know what you're up to today, where you're jumping in from, what the weather's like, where you are, what you've got planned for your podcast. And we've got Connecting Citizens to Science, a podcast sharing current debates and challenges in global health. That sounds an amazing podcast. I'm going to make a little note of that, actually. That's the kind of stuff that I really like. So Connecting Citizens to Science, love it. Where are you about? Let us know where you're about, how life's treating you today. It was Facebook. I thought it was, yeah. Probably I would imagine maybe the Captivate group, or even the Launch Accelerator group. But yeah, I recall Justin, and loving that shirt, by the way. That's a really fun shirt you've got on. I remember Mark, who's the co-founder and MD at Captivate, he and I's got a podcast that we co-host called In and Around Podcasting. And we used to do a video version way back in the early days of it, until we realized it takes a lot of work to edit a video podcast. But on one of the early episodes, I was wearing a kind of, not as fun as that, but I was wearing a kind of fun shirt. And he was saying he was going to get a bunch of designers to green screen me and put some weird stuff on. Thankfully, he didn't. As far as I know, it could be somewhere else. No, I hear you. And yeah, I completely get you on business mate, and being busy. But I'll let Jenny to look out for you. Reader's Nook, yeah. I need to get there, like I said last week's webinar. Jenny is who's the owner, or maybe even a co-owner now, but the original owner of Reader's Nook, is a really good friend with my wife, and we need to try to get down. It's just, like you say, mate, life is busy and other things happen. So I completely understand that for sure. We got Dan back in. Hi, Dan. Glad to see you back here this week, mate. Philadelphia Parkinson's podcast, Substantial Matters. Again, a really important and good topic. So another one to, for people to check out. This is why I like to get sort of intros like this, because it's great to find podcasts and potential new podcasts to listen to. So good stuff there, Dan. Appreciate you being here again, mate. We have Karen. Hey, Karen, long time no see. It's been a while, actually. I know you're part of the Captivate Facebook group. Over in Facebook, the private group for Captivate users. But it's been a while, and encouraging your students and colleagues, that's awesome. Appreciate that. Hope life's treating you good, and you're looking very dazzling in the red dress there, Karen. So great to have you here. So like I say, we'll give everybody maybe a minute or two more just to jump in, say hi, and then we'll sort of lay out what we're going to be looking at on today's live stream. As I mentioned, this is like a whole summer of live streams from us at Captivate, just to really help you really get the most out of the Captivate dashboard, whether you're a brand new user to Captivate, whether you're an established podcaster that might not be using all the features that we have, or maybe you're already a long-time user of Captivate, and because we add new features and updates to existing features, etc., maybe just a refresher course on how to get the most out of a certain feature. So today's live stream even, is all about publishing your episode and all the different sections and features you can use while publishing an episode. Because one of the things we do at Captivate is make sure our features talk to each other and make sense when you're using them, whether it is publishing an episode, whether it's, using research links, all the cool stuff that we've got. But yeah, great to see you here. And hopefully your students are having an awesome time. I'm going to assume learning about podcasting, your students and your colleagues learning about podcasting. Now, is that an education faculty, Karen? Is it somewhere else? Is it at work? Love to know what you're up to there. Yeah, for sure, definitely. So if you're not sure, because it's a private group, so it won't really appear on the search on Facebook. If you're not sure, just hop into our support chat. We'll give you the link directly there. You might even see on your Captivate dashboard when you go into the resource section, possibly. But if not, little icon, bottom right-hand side of the dashboard. Just hop in there to the chat. We'll give you the link and we'll see you over there for sure. Okay. So remember, I'm just going to bring up this quickly for you. Where are we? There we go. So yeah, like I say, we'll probably do about 30 minutes or so, 40 minutes maybe of the live stream for the publish episode section. And then we'll do a bunch of, Q&A at the end of that. So if you have a question about publishing an episode or any of the parts of the publishing an episode section or editing section, drop them in the comments with question at the front of it. And my colleague Ben, who's in the chat as our Captivate YouTube user, is going to be picking them up and highlighting them and dropping them into our Notion doc for us. And we'll pick them up at the end. So as mentioned, let's just see. We've got everybody in now, I think. We got another one. L Crisp. Hi, everyone. Is this for trying? It is, yeah. So yes and no. So it is. This is a live stream for Captivate, the hosting, publishing, distribution, and monetization platform. And it's all about the features on the Captivate dashboard, which includes obviously starting a podcast, publishing your first episode, submitting to Apple, Spotify, etc. So you're definitely in the right place if you're just starting out, because a lot of the features that will be shown on the live streams will be about publishing your first episode, getting started, etc. And then using all the features to grow your podcast from there. We got Wiz Productions. Good morning from Daytona Beach. I can imagine it's pretty warm there. I'm reasonably nice here at the moment. It's 21 degrees, so I'm not sure if that's transferring to Fahrenheit. What's that, about 70 maybe? So it's pleasant. It's nicely warm, but I'm guessing Daytona is fairly warm. And there you go, Captivate. There you go. Cheers, Ben. Thanks for that. So you got the group link there. If not, like I say, just jump into the support chat afterwards and we'll get you sorted out. We got Karen in for getting ready to launch Professionals in Pajamas, a podcast about careers without the glossy elevator pitches. Love that. And I'm loving to see what the artwork for that might look like. Could imagine you have some fun with that. So yeah, that sounds a great podcast, and welcome. And you're very welcome. So what we're going to do, I'm just going to bring them down now. So what we'll do, just a little bit of housekeeping, if you like. As I mentioned, we've got the banner at the bottom there. I'll take that off shortly. If you've got a question, drop it into the comments with question at the front, and Ben will pick that up. I'm Danny Brown. I'm head of podcaster support and experience here at Captivate FM. And as I mentioned, we're hosting, publishing, distribution, monetization platform, measurement platform for the serious indie podcaster, all the way up to some of the biggest podcasts around. And our features are meant to help you either save time on the production side or grow your podcast, if that's growing it from a listeners and downloads point of view, monetization, if it's growing it from business leads, whatever growth looks like to you as a podcaster, our tools are in place to help you save time and grow your podcast. So our live stream series this summer is all about using the Captivate dashboard to do that and to make sure you're getting the very best out of all the Captivate features that we have. So today's episode, I've done it again because I'm a podcaster. Today's live stream is going to be all about publishing your episode. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up my share screen. But before I do that, actually, I'm going to take this banner off and then we'll come back to that. So let's share screen again. Sorry. So yeah, today's live stream, we're going to be looking at publishing an episode. So I'm just going to bring that up here. And I'm going to be using the test show, the dummy show, if you like, that I set up for this live stream. So last week, if you were here, you saw us setting up the podcast, getting all the podcast settings, etc., and ready for publishing your first episode. So obviously, when you first log in and you're looking at this as a new podcaster, you're not going to see any analytics here. You're not going to see some of the sidebar options like creating a Captivate site, etc., until you publish your first episode. So this is what we're going to do today. So with Captivate, we want to make it really easy for you to use the dashboard, which is why we've got it broken down into various sections here. And you can close these all down and collapse the sidebar to the parts that you're not going to use for the time being. And it sort of tidies it up for you and just really lets you concentrate on the features you want to use. And the same goes because you can have unlimited team members on the podcast too. You can close these sections down and only allow access to certain sections for your team members. And we'll look at that in a future live stream. Don't worry about that. But for this one, we want to look at publishing your first episode. So there's a couple of ways there's a few ways you can really do this. You'll notice at the top when you're logged in, we've got Create New. Now, if you click the drop down, you can choose from Create New Episode, Create New Episode Idea. So that's more about the research side of stuff or episode planning. Or you can create a new guest booking. Because Captivate has an integrated guest booking platform, you can create a guest booking directly from the dashboard too. And again, we'll look at all these features and everything that you see down the left-hand side here. We will be looking at them in upcoming live streams. But if you want to just create a new episode, and the cool thing with this button is no matter where you are on the dashboard. So if you're looking at promotion, for example, when we don't have any of these set up, but no matter where you are on the dashboard, the create new will always be there. So you can always just create a new episode right from wherever you are on the dashboard. So that's one way to create it. The other way is from the content library. So if you've already uploaded your audio files for either your trailers, your bonus episodes, your full episodes, etc., you can go to the content library and you can publish from there. So at the moment, I did have files there. So let me just check. There we go. Yeah. So you can see here, I've got some files already uploaded here, both for dynamic content and for the episodes themselves. So you can see here for the actual episode audio files, I can create episode from the content library. So again, if you're trying to plan ahead and looking to, really schedule 6-7 episodes way ahead of schedule and way ahead of time, you can upload the audio files in bulk to make it easier to upload your audio, and then you can start to publish from the content library. But let's just go back to the dashboard and create a new episode from the dashboard. So I'm just going to click Create New. And you'll see this will open up the Publish New Episode screen. And if you use like a CMS like WordPress, Wix, or any kind of blogging platform, I guess, you should feel fairly comfortable with this. Same with, most podcast hosts have a similar approach. We try to keep it really clean so you know exactly where you are when you're creating an episode, where to find stuff, where to add certain sections, etc. So we'll go through that now. So it opens up the Publish New Episode screen. And at the moment, I don't have any audio files assigned to the episode, so I can't, assign any to the moment. So I can either go to add import from the last upload. So the most recent audio file that I uploaded from my Mac, I can use that, but that's not the episode file that I want to use. So what I then want to do is browse content library. If you've not already uploaded any content, you can do it here. Just go to browse files. And obviously that will open up your screen on your Finder, on your PC, your Mac, etc. You would find the audio file you want to upload and then click open or drag and drop if you've got the file and the Finder already open elsewhere. You can just drag it into the section. But I'm going to go to Content Library because I want to actually create a trailer. So this is a brand new podcast. I want to create a trailer for the podcast. And there's two bonuses of doing a trailer. One is you can submit it to Apple, Spotify, etc., and get your show approved, ready for a big launch in a week's time or 2 weeks' time, etc. But a trailer is also really good for promoting your podcast to new, industry publications, to other podcasters if you wanted to do a trailer swap, for example. Maybe bloggers that talk about your kind of niche and your topic, etc. So a trailer is a really good way to share what your podcast is all about in a nice, short, compact, episode. And most trailers, the best trailers, if you do between, say, 30 to 90 seconds, it really depends what you want to get across in your trailer. And we'll talk about that again, in a future live stream. But I've added the Chit Chat trailer here, and you can see here it's only 44 seconds, so all good. Now, there's a lot of option here for Captivate Spark, which is Captivate's AI assistant, which is enabled on this podcast. You may have it enabled on yours, you may not, depending on if you're wanting to use our AI tool, if you have other AI tools that you want to use, or you just want to do stuff manually. But on here, I can generate transcript and AI episode assets for this trailer. Now, I'm not going to use this for this particular podcast because it's just a trailer. So I'm going to show you how to add stuff manually because, as I mentioned, you may not use Captivate's AI assistant. So we can show you that when we go through the Spark, the Captivate AI live stream and a future live stream, probably in a few weeks' time. Okay. But if you did want to use that, you just generate it from here. So what you want to do is just generate or add your title. So I've just created some dummy titles in copy earlier so we can start filling this in. And again, if you were here last week on the Create a Podcast or Start a Podcast live stream, you know that the episode show notes, much like the podcast description, is really where you want to sell the episode and tell people what they can expect from the episode. So because this is a trailer, this is like a really straightforward show notes that I'm going to add here. So I'm just going to copy them from my little screen over here. So you can see here, all I've done, I'm just going to tidy it up because that's the formatting from Google Docs. But you can see here, this is the show notes for this trailer. And show notes are the equivalent, the podcast equivalent of blog articles or articles online, etc. So you can see all this is doing, and I'll expand the writing area so you can see that. All this is doing is telling people what to expect from this particular episode. So it's a little bit of fun conversation as to what to expect from, because it's a trailer, I want people to get a feel for what to expect when my main episodes go live once the podcast has been launched. So you can see here, I've just put a little bit of description, what Chit Chat's about. It's like sitting down with friends, but talking about random things. New episodes every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. So hit follow and let's turn the fun in. Let's turn a lot of things into a lot of fun. And where to find Chit Chat. You know, you can make these show notes whatever you wish. Because it's a trailer, as mentioned, it's really straightforward. If it was a proper episode and one of your full episodes, you would get a bit more in depth there. And depending on what features of Captivate you're using, you can then start to add other features or other sections to that. So you can see here, up here, for example, you've got shortcodes. Okay, so and this is all part of the episode planning and reset, the dynamic show notes feature, which again, we'll be looking at a live stream, a future live stream, don't worry about that. But you can start to see here, you can add a whole bunch of different information as shortcodes to your episode show notes. And what that will mean then is if you use any of these features, so if you use the dynamic show notes, for example, if you've got guests on your podcast, if you've got a promo link to your landing page where you can send listeners or potential listeners to choose what app to listen to your podcast on, you could put down podcast single promo link. So I'm going to actually add that, for example. Okay. And what that does is it just adds these for you. And you can see here, do you want this to be dynamic and static? And again, I'll go deeper into this on the dynamic show notes live stream. But if you use dynamic, it just means that if that link ever changes and it's now out of date on all your show notes, you can just come back into that shortcode, change the one single part of the shortcode, and then Captivate will automatically update that with the new link on all the episodes that this little piece of shortcode is inserted in. Okay, so once you've inserted it, that's all it looks like. And then on your show notes, what that will look like on your website, if you use the Captivate site, on Apple, Spotify, etc., it'll just say, it'll be the link to your landing page you've created on Captivate to send potential listeners to choose whether to listen on Apple, Spotify, etc. So as mentioned, as we go into the live streams for them to the summer and I start showing you all these cool features, we will come back and look at these episodes and start to add these shortcodes, etc. So you know exactly what that looks like and why and how you would use them. Okay. So once you're happy with the show notes here, you just continue scrolling down. I'm just going to dismiss this little warning notice here. So episode number and season number. There's three options for you on podcasts. You can have episodic, which means people can jump in at any time and listen to any episode and not be lost, so to speak. It'll make sense for them to start listening at episode 10 as much as it would on episode 1. There's no sort of plot to follow. Episodic with seasons is the same idea. People can jump in at any time, but you have your episodes and seasons. So season 1 might have 10 episodes, season 2, 12, season 3 back to 10, etc. And seasons are really a way for either you to take a break and plan out next seasons and just sort of regroup and see what's worked in season 1, what might need to change for season 2, that kind of thing. And then serial, which is based on really kind of fiction podcast, storytelling podcast, anything where you have to start at episode 1 and then go episode 2, episode 3, etc., for the podcast to make sense. So what you would do is you would choose your episode number and what season number it is, and then that will ensure that Captivate lets Apple, Spotify, and podcast apps that support seasons know which episode number it is, which season it is, so they can filter that properly for you. Now, because this is a trailer and it's the first trailer, episode number is 0 and season number is 0. This show, it's not a seasonal show. It's not going to be like a storytelling show. It's just going to be episodic. So I'm just going to leave all of these blank. When you start to put in episode numbers 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, so let's say this was episode 1, the next time you go to create new episode, we will automatically load episode 2 in as your episode number, because we'll realize that your previous episode was episode 1, so this one is episode 2. It's just a quick way for us to update it instead of you having to update it or maybe even forgetting about it. Dynamic content and ads. So Captivate has our own dynamic insertion tool called Amy, and this is where you can add pre-rolls, mid-rolls, and post-rolls. And basically a pre-roll is audio that plays before your episode audio. Post-roll, as it suggests, plays after your episode audio has finished. And then mid-roll is basically anywhere within the episode audio itself. So this is perfect for sponsor messages, advertiser messages. If you've got a trailer swap with other podcasts and you're telling people about their podcast and they're telling their listeners about your podcast, etc. If you've got time-sensitive offers. So you may have a course, for example, where the membership price is normally $97 a month, but for the month of July, it's going to be $47 a month. So you might want to put in like a dynamic piece of content into all your episodes that tells your listeners about this offer. And then you can also remove that when that offer finishes. So dynamic content is really a great way to make your podcast a lot more interactive, a lot more valuable to your listeners, but it also allows you to promote certain things, and whatever that looks like. So what I'm going to do for this particular podcast, I've actually created, I've not created, I've just used a dummy intro and outro, but I'm going to use an intro and an outro for this podcast. So you can see here, I've got 3 dynamic pieces of content. So I'm going to put intro for the pre-roll, and I'm going to do outro for the post-roll. Okay. And there we go. So you got outro. Now, this would normally play the intro, which may be me giving a little bit of an audio blurb about the episode or how to follow on your favorite app, etc. Whatever that might look like. Might even be your theme music. Because the great way of using dynamic content like this is sometimes you just get tired of your music that you use, or maybe the default intro that you use, because you've used it for a year, you want to change it up. But if you've recorded that while editing the episode, it's now kind of baked into that audio. So all these audio files have got that intro stitched into the episode, if you like. If you use dynamic intros and dynamic outros, you can change them up at any time, and it's not going to impact your older episodes because all they've got is purely the episode audio. Now you can change up the intro and the outro. You may have started as a solo podcaster, for example. Now it's a co-hosted show, or vice versa. So the intro for the previous version of the show is now out of date. So there's ways that you can do it that way. Because this is a trailer, though, I'm actually going to leave this out. Because generally, you don't have any dynamic content in the trailer. The trailer's pretty much straightforward as it is, and it's been recorded as it is with the music and everything on it. Okay? But if I wanted to add my dynamic content here, this is where you would do it. Chapters, because Captivate supports, we're a huge supporter of the Podcasting 2.0 initiative. We support the chapters feature. So if you've got a podcast that benefits from a lot of different topics, a lot of different guests, for example. So if you think of the Pod News Weekly review, they'll have maybe 3 or 4 guests on that show, as well as talk about 5 or 6 different articles and topics of discussion from the podcast industry from the previous 7 days. So they would use chapters to separate with the guests, to separate the topics, etc. So you can add these chapters here, and there's a few ways you can do it. If you have an editing piece of software, so Audacity, Hindenburg that I use, for example, Pro Tools, whatever it might be, Reaper, and they have the option to add chapter markers to the audio file while you're editing it, then when you export that audio file, that's going to have the chapter markers in there. When you upload that audio file to Captivate, the chapter markers will then appear here along with the titles of the chapters. So it's a nice way to, get chapters already pulled in. If you don't have that, you can go in at any time and add a chapter and give it a title. And again, because this is a trailer, I'm not really going to use chapters for this. It would make sense to use a chapter for the trailer. But you can see here, you can add that here. You can also add episode or chapter art, for example. So you may want to include the headshot of a guest. You may want to include the cover art of a podcast you're trailer swapping with. Anything like that, you can add that here. The cool thing with chapters, and you can also link out, if you've got a link out to a resource, you can also link here too. The cool thing with chapters is there's a lot of, well, the majority of podcast apps actually support chapters. And Apple Podcast brought in support for chapters as well, either early this year or late last year. I can't remember when it was, but now they support chapters too. So it's very much a feature that the majority of the app support. Spotify is a little different. They do have chapters, but it's their own version of chapters. So what you would have to do is any of the timestamps that you would normally use for chapters, you would have to actually drop them into your show notes instead. So you put like 1 minute 00 here, 1 minute 52 here, 5 minutes, etc. in your show notes. And then that would be clickable chapters on Spotify's apps. The only drawback there is obviously for the podcast apps that support the normal chapters, you'll now have duplicates. You'll have the chapters from Podcasting 2.0 plus the links in the show notes. But yeah, chapters are a great way to really, again, make your podcast a lot more and make your episode a lot more interactive. But again, this is a trailer, so I'm not going to add any chapters here. If we go down to advanced options, this gives you a bit of flexibility over how you want this episode to go out and when you want it to go out, etc. So we have a feature called feed exclusion. So there may be a time when you've got an episode that you want to publish as usual on your podcast, but you don't want it to go out in your RSS feed and out to Apple, Spotify, etc. It may be premium content. It might be time-sensitive content. It might be something that you want to share with premium subscribers or, journalists or anything like that, where you still want it to go out on your podcast, not to your RSS feed at the moment, but it will go out to your RSS feed at a later date. So you don't want to have to come back and re-upload and republish the episode, etc. So basically, exclude this episode from feed and Captivate sites is a cool way to do that. And then when you're ready to make that episode public, you would just come back into this episode, uncheck this little box, and that will be pushed out to the RSS feed as normal. Set expiration date. So again, this is a great way if you do have time-sensitive bonus episodes going out. So talking about courses, talking about a live event that you might be doing, like a live stream. You can set an episode expiration date. So let's say I was promoting this live stream on my podcast episode, and we're doing this on June the 11th, 11 a.m. till noon Eastern, at 12:05 or 12:15, for example. So let's say today at 12, let's just bring the time up. So let's put 12:05. So there we go. So now at 12:05 on today's date, this episode will expire from the feed. So it will be pulled off from the feed and it won't be shown on Apple, Spotify, etc. because now the information about this live stream is out of date. So again, it's a nice, cool little feature to ensure that your podcast and all the episodes are fully up to date and just got the relevant information for your listeners. And this, you can do this with any episode. So as I mentioned, for whatever reason you might want to expire a certain episode, you can choose this option here. You've then got episode type and is explicit. So episode type is normal, trailer, and bonus. And this is just for us to add the tag to your RSS feed that tells Apple, Spotify, etc. what kind of episode it is. So if it's a trailer like this one, I'm going to highlight trailer because what will happen then is Apple, Spotify, and other apps that support the trailer format or recognize the trailer tag on your RSS feed will then highlight this as a trailer. So Spotify puts it at the top of your show listing on Spotify. Apple Podcasts have it separate, but generally it's at the bottom of your episodes in its own little section. And other podcast apps have a different way of highlighting it too. And if it's bonus content, so it's not a trailer, but it's not a normal episode, it's just bonus content. So it may be, for example, let's say you have a news podcast or a book review podcast or something like that. And the one episode talked about this book in a series. And now the authors released like a little bonus PDF of a side character's adventure or something like that. You may not want to do a full episode on that. You might not want to update the existing episode on the book about that. So you might want to just release a bonus episode that talks about this new PDF mini book that the author has released, for example. So you would just highlight that as bonus. And again, this shows that, displays it on your podcast apps that it's a bonus content. So then, listeners will know, is it a full episode? Is that a trailer? Is it a bonus? It's just a nice way to keep everything nice and displayed well on podcast apps. Is it explicit or not? So when you're setting up your podcast, you will choose whether your podcast is explicit and features adult content or not. The good thing with that is if your podcast generally is not explicit, but now and again you may have an episode where there may be a bad word said or you're talking about an adult topic or something, you can choose it at episode level that episode is explicit, but the rest of the podcast is still clean and available for everybody. So it's a nice way to make sure that you're just telling Apple the right details about your show and Spotify, etc., so that you won't get into trouble, for want of a better word, for putting an explicit episode out and not filtering it as such. If you use transcripts, which are awesome for obviously making your podcast as accessible as possible for the hard of hearing and deaf community, as well as if people are in an environment where the audio isn't coming through well so they can still read along to the episode, you can either upload your own transcript, so that'd be an SRT file, or if you use Captivate's AI assistant, we will create a transcript for you and then we'll pull all the AI assets from that for the rest of the AI features, which again, like I say, we'll look at that in a future live stream, don't worry about that. But yeah, you can upload your transcript here and that will show on the podcast apps, which are most of them now, that offer transcripts, as well as your Captivate website if you use that, or if you use the Captivate WordPress plugin sync, that will display on your episode page on your WordPress site. So transcripts are a great way, and they also offer some SEO value as well. There could be some little nugget of information dug deep into your episode that search engines will pull out because I've recognized that, because I've scoured the transcript. Episode URL. So if you don't use the free Captivate site or you don't use the Captivate plugin for WordPress, like I mentioned, generally, if you do use these, we'll automatically create an episode URL for you. Sorry, let me just correct that. If you don't use them, this episode URL will be blank. The reason that's blank is if you've got a self-hosted website somewhere, so it's like WordPress, Squarespace, Substack, whatever it might be, and you create blog posts for your episode and then you embed a media player on there, what you can do there is grab the URL for that episode page on your website and drop it here. That way, the episode title on your RSS feed will link back to the proper website, which in turn means Apple, Spotify, Pocket Cast, etc. also link back to the proper website. Just gives your domain a bit more authority and make sure that the traffic is going to the right website domain and the destination. On the marketing side, if you use individual episode artwork, you can upload that here. I use that for pretty much all my podcasts now. I find it's a fun way to sort of keep the brand of the main podcast art, but also feature the guest or feature the topic that I'm talking about, etc. You don't have to use episode artwork. The majority of podcast apps do support episode artwork though, so if you did want to use it, you would just upload that here. We support a feature called alternate enclosure. You don't have to worry about the technicalities of it, but basically what it means is if you've got a YouTube version of your podcast and you do YouTube videos for each episode, you can grab the YouTube link for the video version of this episode and drop this in here. And what that will do is, again, if you use Captivate sites, that will appear in your episode show notes underneath your podcast player. So you'll have the podcast player, then the video, then the show notes, etc. There's also podcast apps that support the alternate enclosure option. So what that means for users of these apps, they can either listen to the audio version only as normal, or if they want to watch the video version, they can watch the video version on the same app. They don't have to go to YouTube, etc. They can they can watch it from their app. Makes it a really good full experience for that listener on their podcast app. Supports this. So a really cool, simple way to have video as part of your listener experience. Now, at the moment, I don't have any research links. This is something, again, we'll look at on a future live stream. And I feel I'm going to be saying this a lot as we go through, each part of the dashboard. But all the features that you see here are part of the Captivate dashboard, are available on all plans. So we will be looking at them in future live streams. But Captivate has a web browser extension. And so if you reference articles, news stories, blog posts, videos, whatever you might reference in episodes when you're talking to guests or talking to your listeners or whatever, if you want to drop them into your show notes, you can use the Captivate browser extension. And when you're on that website, just use the extension and we will pull over the title of the page, a little blurb, and the link back to that page. And then you can insert that, as you can see here, into your episode. So then when listeners will listen to the episode, and you mention you can check out all these links that we're talking about in the show notes, you've got the links already there. They can then click through and reference these articles, topics, etc. that you're discussing. And again, this is just really making the listener experience as full as it can be. Then you have guest bookings. So as I mentioned earlier, Captivate has their own guest booking feature, and this makes it really easy for you to create a public guest booking page that you can share the link with, and then potential guests can click through to that link, drop in their name, all their bio info, their social links, their headshots, etc., and that will be booked as a slot for them inside Captivate. They'll get a notification that they can add to the calendar. You'll get a notification so you can get it added to your calendar, and it makes it really simple for you to start building up a guest roster, if you like, for your podcast. The cool thing is, because it's all internal to Captivate, if you do have guests and you use the guest booking feature, you can then choose the guest and which booking you want to insert, and then insert their details into the show notes. So name, bio, links, etc. The cool thing with this is, again, because, like I mentioned way at the start, Captivate's all about saving you time on your production process. So if your guest ever changes their bio, they may get married, they may change their surname, they may change their, a professional, if they become a doctor, for example, after, a medical school, anything at all that changes for their bio. If they're regular guests and they've been across multiple episodes, that bio is now going to be out of date. All you need to do is go into your guest section on Captivate, update the bio to the correct information, click save. We will automatically update all the episodes that they've been in with the right bio for the guest itself. So it's a really cool feature, great time saver. Member access. Now, I don't have this activated yet because, again, we'll be looking at memberships and monetization in a future live stream. But member access allows you to choose, is this an exclusive episode for a higher tier of premium subscribers, for example? So Captivate has their own memberships and tips feature. Our memberships is very similar to Patreon. Our tips feature very similar to Buy Me a Coffee. So if you have membership access enabled here and you've got multiple tiers, much like a Patreon, you may want to offer exclusive episodes to a higher tier. You may wish to offer early access to another tier. You may want to offer ad-free content to another tier, etc. This is where you would actually choose what member access would look like. And if you connect your podcast to Apple subscriptions, which is their premium offering, you can publish your content within Captivate and then send it out to your premium subscribers on Apple subscriptions, all from the Captivate dashboard. But again, we'll look at that when we talk about Captivate's memberships and monetization and how you would actually get that out and set it up. But this is where you would choose all that information here. Okay. And then general release time. You can either publish immediately. So you can see here, I've got a default publish time of 9 o'clock in the morning. So anytime I create a new episode, it's going to show as being published at 9 o'clock in the morning. I can change that at any time. So if I wanted to schedule this as opposed to publish it, I can go to a date in the future. So let's say the 15th. And now you can see my little publish button is gone to schedule. If I go back to today, you can see that's changed back to publish. And we'll give you a little blurb here that tells you exactly when it's going to be published. So you can see here, this is going to be published to your public RSS feed on Wednesday, June 11th at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Perfect. So I'm happy with this. I'm happy with all the information I've got here. I'm just going to hit publish. And then as you do that, you'll see the screen will update. And that's it. You've got your first episode published. And we'll tell you here the published status. You can see it's in green, so it's published. We've got the little check mark here, the little checkbox. And then we've got a few little options to the side of it, which is share the episode. So you can either share a direct link into your social posts, you can embed it, onto your own website, you can use the direct audio file URL. So if someone wanted to have this episode and share it to their audience, and you want to give them the MP3 version, for example, you could do that there. And if I had Captivate websites enabled on this podcast, that would be another option. It would be here that I could just open a Captivate website and view this episode immediately. But that's it. That's the how to actually publish the episode on Captivate. Really straightforward. And as I mentioned, this is a trailer, so it's like really simple. And from here, we would go to distribute, because now that you've got your episode published, you want to distribute. That's going to be next week's live stream though. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come back and stop sharing, and let's come back in here. Let's see, come back up to the questions and the comments, etc. I know Ben has been making notes of any questions that came in. So I'm just going to go down here and see if I missed any, but let's just have a check. Okay, so here we go. Let's yeah, here we go. So yeah, this is like one of the first questions came in, and I just missed yours now, so I'm going to go back to that as well. So Wiz Productions, can you show us how to get listener feedback on our podcast? In my case, they go out to Spotify, Audible, and iHeart. That's definitely an option that will be showing you on a future live stream, which is basically how to encourage more engagement and listener feedback. There's a lot of ways you can do that. You can have like a voice message option on your website, for example. You can have an audio call to action in your episode that says, hey, we'd love to hear what you say. You can either reach us at emailaddress.com or go to our website and leave us a voice message, or go to this special link. And this is going to, and we'll show you how to do this when we talk about using your attribution links and marketing links, etc. And send them to a Google Doc that's got like a feedback or a type form or something that's got a feedback area. So there are lots of ways you can do that, and different apps have different ways too. Some offer comments, some offer polls, etc. So there's definitely ways and means to do that for sure. Here we go. What MP3 encoding parameters do you recommend? Now, is that like the bit rates and the sample rates, etc.? Just to confirm on that. I'm going to assume it is. And if that's the case, I mean, generally Captivate will let you upload whatever your bit rates are, whatever your audio file is. So we don't alter the audio, we don't, scale it down to a lower bit rate, for example. So if you record in stereo at 48 kilohertz sample rate and 320 kbps bit rate, we'll allow you to upload that way. The only thing you keep in mind is when most like people when listening to podcasts aren't listening in headphones. They're listening on their car audio. They're listening in the background on a smart speaker. They might just have their phone audio, for example. They might be listening on a train where it's really noisy, etc. So unless you're doing like a super highly polished production, like an audio fiction show or something like that, where you need a lot of sound effects, a lot of music, a lot of really strong production, I wouldn't necessarily go that high when it comes to the formatting and the bit rates and the sample rates. Generally for spoken words, 96 kilobits per second and 48 kilohertz mono is ideal for spoken word, and 128 to 192 kilobits per second. And again, 48 kilohertz, that's generally the norm now. Sample rate there, and stereo, if you wanted to do that, that's more than enough for the majority of podcast apps and listeners. Here's another question. Is it okay to include a URL in the show notes? Yeah, for sure, definitely. And there's a great way to do that. So you noticed that I was going through the short codes on the episode publishing screen or the episode editing screen. And so there's a bunch of ways that you can do this in Captivate, but you can do this in any podcast host. But on Captivate, for example, so on any podcast host, you could, definitely just put a URL in the show notes and say, check out our print publication, check out our website, whatever the link destination is, check out that. With Captivate, we have features like attribution links, where you can take an external link and then create a memorable little short code or short link that tracks clicks to that link and tells you how successful that's been. So you can drop these in as either short codes using the short code options that I showed you on the episode screen, or just highlight text in the show notes themselves and hyperlink that text out to that destination. The cool thing with using the short codes though is you can change them up at any time without having to go back into every single episode that you've put a link into, because now all you're doing is updating that one single piece of shortcode, and that will automatically update all the links in every single episode that you've got that link in. Okay. Here's what we got. Okay, any tips on getting the show note format into transferring to YouTube notes? Yeah, this is unfortunately, this is all down to how different apps, and it's not just YouTube. Spotify does it, Apple does it, Pocket Cast does it. It's really down to how different apps format their templates, because you got to think like YouTube is its own basically publishing platform. Spotify, even though it does pull in your RSS feed, it's a podcasting app. It's still kind of its own publishing platform because it is a hosting platform as well as a distribution platform. Apple's got certain options too. Then you've got different versions of the app. So Apple web app, for example, has slightly different formatting and features than Apple's native iPhone app or Apple Podcast app, which again is different from Apple Podcast desktop app. Same goes for Spotify. Spotify web player is slightly different from Spotify desktop app, slightly different from Spotify's mobile app. So unfortunately, it is kind of down to the different formats of different platforms, and there isn't one generic option that you can do. So generally, what we recommend, I know you're putting a line break in, you get 2 in YouTube. If you're putting a line break in Captivate, are you like double entering, like clicking enter twice or something? Because we'll automatically format for you. When you click enter, we'll put the proper paragraph break space in there. So you shouldn't have to do that, and it should format properly. I know my podcasts that I've got going from RSS feed over to YouTube, the formatting for the most part is fine. I may have to go in now and again because I use some dynamic show notes. It's got different formatting. I may have to tidy that up. But unfortunately, I hear you, and maybe somewhere we can get workarounds to. But at the moment, it would be having to edit it in YouTube if you need certain options for YouTube. Okay. Do the markers in the script serve as chapter markers? They should. I haven't used the script for a while, so this might be a question that the script team help you with. But if you're using the script as your editor and you're putting markers in, just confirm that they are chapter markers and that the podcasting 2.0 chapter markers, because as I mentioned, like Spotify, for example, they won't recognize the chapter markers anyway. You have to put them into your show notes. So it may be the same with the script. As I mentioned, I haven't used the script for a while, so I'm not sure what their markers are. Certainly in Hindenburg that I use, when I put a marker in, that's a chapter marker, and that will then be pulled over to Captivate. Same if you're using Auphonic, which is the online audio optimization tool. If you put markers in there, they'll be marked as chapter markers. The audio file will export with them. So when you upload to Captivate, these markers will then be pulled into Captivate. So maybe just have a quick check with the script just to be sure. It sounds like they should be, but I would just double check, with the script team. Yes, you can. So yeah, I mean, trailers are perfect for that. So because you're using it as a promotional piece of audio, yes, you can send it out to Apple, Spotify, etc. And we'll show you next week how to do that. So next week's live stream is all about distribution and then how to find links to your show, how to get them back into Captivate, how to use them to promote your show, etc. So yeah, you can certainly send trailers, and we always recommend creating a trailer prior to a show launch. So if you've got a show launch on July 1st, for example, release a trailer mid-June and submit that to Apple, Spotify, etc. That way it gets your podcast approved, and you can then send that out to people and share the link to the trailer with people to tell them about your upcoming podcast. It's going to be behind the paywall, but here's what you can expect. And maybe just use the first 1 or 2 episodes as like freemium options. And if you're on Captivate, you've got an episode expiry date, for example, you could pull it off the feed after a week or 2, and now it goes behind your paywall. That's an option that you could do. But yeah, you can definitely do that for sure. Yep, auto AI transcripts. Yeah, I've got to be honest. I've got a slight accent. It's not as bad. I'm not going to say my accent is bad. Let me rephrase that. I moved to Canada in 2006. Prior to that, I lived and worked in England for about 15, 16 years. So I've been away from Scotland for a long time. I still feel I've got a Scottish accent, just not as strong as it used to be. I've tended to find a lot of AI transcript tools that I've used. I've had to tidy up a lot of the transcript. Maybe about 30% of the transcript needed to be tidied up. The Captivate one, for whatever reason, it gets the majority of my colloquialisms or whatever you want to call it. So I'm loving the Captivate AI transcripts for sure. Yeah, so the transcripts from the script. So what you can do, so I wouldn't bother with the text file because the text file, you'd have to copy paste that into the transcript section. Now, I'm assuming you use Captivate. If not, I apologize. It may be that the podcast host you use supports text files. But yeah, there's a few ways you can use them. SRT files are really good because that's what podcast apps will recognize, and they'll have all the different timestamps in there, and they'll format for the podcast apps. VTT is another one. VTT used to primarily be a lot for video transcripts and video captions, but it's also very widely used for audio transcripts now. So VTT is a good format. If you use the Captivate feature, the AI feature that does the transcripts as well, what we'll do is we'll format correctly based on where it's going to appear. So once we've generated your transcript and your episode is published, if it's going out to podcast apps, we'll format the podcast app version for podcast apps. If you've got a Captivate site, we'll format and we'll keep the nice clean paragraphs for you. So it reads really well as opposed to the more stilted version that podcast apps use because they're trying to just read timestamps all the time and update their scroll and feed. If you use the Captivate Sync WordPress plugin, again, we'll leave it in sort of paragraph format on the episode page on your WordPress site because we know that's how people read on a website. So I'd probably try to stay away from a .text file and either go SRT or VTT, or download the whole transcript as like a Word or a docx or something like that. Tidy it up in that way if it needs tidying up, but I'm guessing it's already tidied up in the script. And then copy paste that over to your description box or your transcript box on your host, depending on what they use and what they do for transcripts. The membership is hosted. So memberships, Captivate memberships is all in Captivate. So you set them up, you connect your Stripe account, set up memberships, set up tips, etc. And then once you're in there, you would then create the public supporter page. And as I say, we'll be definitely looking at this in a future live stream. But you'd create the public supporter page, and then the different tiers would appear on there. Then when you're creating your episode, that's when you would choose which tiers and which options would go out to them. So there's a few ways you can do this. It depends where you're setting up your podcast. So if you put it behind a paywall on your own website, the easiest thing to do is publish your episode, grab the embed code for that episode player, either from Captivate, whichever web host you use, because it won't be going out to Spotify and Apple, I guess. You can't use their players. So yeah, grab the embed code for whatever media player you're going to use and embed that on the page you're going to publish this content to. And that will obviously be, normally password protected. So you can either create them user ID and password, and they would log into their account on your website, or just make a password and they can access it that way. If you're doing it as a private podcast, which is a whole different area, and again, I think we're looking at that in a future live stream, then they will actually get an invite to subscribe to the private podcast, and they get unique links, and they will use that to listen to the private podcast on the preferred podcast app. But if you're looking to put it behind a paywall on your own site, yeah, the easiest way to do it is however your CRM works, however your website works, create a user account for them and a password access account. They can then log in and listen to that content. Okay, can I? Yes, you can. So I just mentioned that there actually. Hi, Elaine. Yeah, so Captivate, if you're talking about Captivate anyway, yeah. You can have as many public podcasts as you wish on Captivate and up to 100 private podcasts on Captivate. This is on all plans. So all plans on Captivate come with all features from day one. We don't charge for any better, and air waving there, any premium features or anything. All features are available from day one. The only real hard cost to Captivate is our download, servers, like our storage that we use for downloads and streaming the media files, etc., to the podcast apps. So that's the only charge or the only cost we'll put back to you. So your plans are based on monthly downloads each month. All other features, including private podcasts, are all available on the same plan, and you do all of that on one account. So you could have 1,000 public podcasts, 100 private podcasts, all be on the same Captivate account if you wish. Here we go then. on the transcripts, even the music, even the theme music gets, what should I title that show notes and suggestion? So yeah, I mean, if the theme music gets picked up, now are you, if it's at the start, for example, then what I tend to do, Mark and I's got a show that we do where we have a sing-along intro that's got theme music that Mark then, does an intro as the music still playing underneath. So what I tend to do at the top there is put the lyrics to the song. If it's theme music and that's showing up in the transcript, all I would just do, or not in the transcripts. Yeah. So in the transcripts, all I would do is just put the theme music playing, something like that, between timestamp X and timestamp Y, and then that leads into your main audio text. The show notes, that would be depending again how your show notes are showing transcripts. For Captivate, we tend to keep them separate from the show notes so they're not getting all jumbled up and mixed up, etc. But yeah, I would just put something like intro theme music, something like that. If it's got a title, give it the title and who it's by if you want to give credit to who it's by, etc. So that's the way I would probably do that. Okay. Oh, that's awesome. And SRT, yeah, I mean, generally that's the way I use it. But if it's on a website or anything, SRT can sometimes look a little bit choppy because it's mainly formatted for podcast apps. So we will tidy that up into paragraphs based on that. Okay. My Scottish accent. I like that. My Scottish accent. I like that. I would definitely have that. I will have that for sure. David Hooper talks about having a podcast you just practice instead of making a free one on Spotify. Yeah, I mean, you can do that. You can do that without a private podcast as well. You could create a public podcast if you wanted to, but just never submit it to Apple, Spotify, etc. And if you're using Captivate, use the exclude from feed option for each episode. And that way, nothing will ever go on your public RSS feed. However, if you wanted that to be a public IM podcast later, you would just go back into the episodes that you're happy to go public and uncheck that little exclude from feed option. And that will then send these episodes to your RSS feed. Now you can submit that to Apple, Spotify, etc. for everybody else to hear. So yeah, you can definitely use private podcasts for that. Or you can, use other options for that. Now I'm just going to check. So that's all the questions that I can see in the comments. So I'm going to check the notes that Ben was taking for me. Yep, no, all good. So we've got them all covered there. So we've got a couple of minutes left, actually. So if you've got any questions that you want to have popped up, just drop the question in the comments. We've got another couple of minutes. We can squeeze another one, maybe two in there. But yeah, just drop them in. And if not, we can, we'll start wrapping up soon. Now, as I mentioned, next week, we're going to be looking at the distribution side of things. So now that you've got your first episode published and you're ready to get your podcast onto Apple, Spotify, etc., we'll be looking at, okay, how do you distribute? Once it's distributed, how do you get the links to your podcast on these podcast apps? How you then use these links? Where do you display them? How many do you display? Where should you be sending your listeners to, etc.? So once you've got all that, now that you've got the episode published, like I say, we'll be doing that next week. So next week, same time, same place, we'll be here every week at 11 a.m. Eastern, which is 8 a.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. UK time, and there's many, many other time zones. But that's the three ones that I always remember. So we'll be here every Wednesday all the way through to October. No, we won't. I love live streaming, but not 5 months of live streaming, all the way through to August 27. So yeah, we'll be looking out for you then. You're very welcome, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Who else we got here? Yep, we see that, Karen, and we've enjoyed watching your show grow, and great to hear you've now got, others on the podcasting journey with you. So that's awesome. And you're very welcome, Dan. Like I say, hopefully we'll see you next week. I understand you're busy. Do give my Jan my love, and we'll see you all next week. You're very welcome. So that's just, there we go. It's midday now. Whatever you're going to do today, I hope it's a great rest of the Wednesday morning, afternoon, evening. And you've got some great stuff coming up this weekend, a nice relaxing weekend, and the weather is super nice and kind and to you. And until next time, keep podcasting and keep having fun. Take care.